In November 2002, a 20-year-old college student left a party at his secluded Minnesota campus and vanished without a trace. Authorities initially suspected he had accidentally drowned in a nearby lake, but an exhaustive search turned up nothing. As the investigation deepened, suspicions of foul play emerged, especially in light of unsettling allegations involving members of the university and revealing discoveries on the student's computer. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jalen. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Joshua's story. Joshua Guimond was born on June 18, 1982, to Brian Guimond and Lisa Cheney. When he was 4, he moved from Redwood Falls, Minnesota, to Maple Lake, Minnesota, where he was raised. From a young age, Joshua was academically driven and ambitious. He was voted most likely to succeed in high school, and he said that he wanted to run for the President of the United States someday. He graduated from Maple Lake High School as the valedictorian and class president of the class of 2000. Afterward, Joshua attended St. John's University, a small private Catholic school in Collegeville, Minnesota. He was an honor student majoring in political science. He planned to later attend Yale Law School and run for the Minnesota State House of Representatives, starting what would have been a promising political career. Joshua debated in the school's pre-law society and played the baritone in the wind ensemble. At the time, Joshua was a 20-year-old junior living in a room in the St. Maur dormitory building with 5 roommates. Leading up to November 2002, in the area around the St. John's campus, male college students had been the subject of attacks, including abductions and stalkings. St. John's is notably surrounded by 2,500 acres of woods and lakes. On the night of November 9, 2002, Joshua was writing a paper in his dorm room. Later that evening, he left and walked north with his friends to go to a party in an apartment in the Metten Court dormitory building. Records show he used his computerized key card to enter his own apartment at 11:06 p.m. before leaving for the party. There's no record that he used his key card to enter his apartment again that night or ever. Joshua left his wallet, glasses, and other important items behind in his dorm. As he walked the 3-mile trek from his dorm to the Metten Court building, his friend said he was in a great mood and nothing seemed wrong with him. At the party, he played poker with a group of other students. He had between 7 and 12 beers, but according to others at the party, did not seem to get intoxicated. Around 11:45 p.m., Joshua got up and left the apartment without saying anything. However, he had implied beforehand that he had somewhere else to be. Different sources say his friends assumed he walked south back to St. Maur or went down the hall to use the bathroom. 15 minutes after he left, Joshua's friends attempted to call him at his dorm's phone, but received no answer. Many at the party didn't realize Joshua left, and those who did assumed he went back to his dorm to sleep. He was last seen wearing blue jeans and a gray St. John sweatshirt, which was not appropriate clothing for spending a significant amount of time in the snow. The path between Metten Court and St. Maur is half a mile long. Between the two buildings is Stump Lake, and the most likely path someone would take between the two includes a bridge near the lake. 2 witnesses saw Joshua walking on the bridge between 12:15 and 12:30 a.m. When Joshua's roommate, who was also at the party, got home at 2:42 a.m., he said Joshua was not in the dorm. However, between 11:52 p.m. and 12:32 a.m., music had been playing on the computer in his bedroom. Some songs had been skipped, implying the computer was being physically operated at that time. On the afternoon of the 10th, when Joshua failed to show up for a mock trial debate hosted by the school's pre-law society, his friends started to worry. They tried contacting him but could not get a hold of him, which was unusual for Joshua. They reached out to other classmates, but no one had seen him. His friends then contacted campus security. Campus security found his car still on campus in the same spot it usually was, apparently undisturbed. His personal belongings were still in his room, and his AOL Instant Messenger showed that he hadn't logged on in about 12 hours. Eerily, the television in his room was still on. There had been no activity on his bank accounts. On the night of November 10th, authorities called Joshua's parents to tell them that their son was missing, nearly 24 hours after he was last seen. In the aftermath of Joshua's disappearance, students on campus took more safety precautions, like not walking alone, locking their doors, and checking on all their friends. Remember, around this time, St. John students were experiencing abductions and stalkings, and it appeared Joshua himself had fallen victim to these attacks. From the start of the case, Joshua's parents believed he had been taken and that someone on campus had relevant information, which the police denied suspecting. Joshua's friends started an information campaign to spread awareness. This included posters that were put up in the area ranging from Fargo, North Dakota to the Twin Cities in Minnesota. For some time afterwards, a sign at an entrance to the campus had Joshua's picture and information about his disappearance. The FBI and over 100 National Guard members joined at least 250 locals in searching a 16-square-mile area on and around the college campus. Search helicopters made frequent passes using infrared imaging. Joshua was one of 3 young white male college students who would mysteriously disappear from the region within an 11-day time frame. Over the next 2 weeks, Chris Jenkins and Michael Knoll, both young male students at the college in the region, also disappeared. One theory investigators considered was that Joshua had fallen into the lake that night and drowned, possibly while drunk. In December 2002 and January 2003, bloodhounds were used to assist searchers. One dog used within days of the disappearance tracked Joshua's scent to Smuff Lake and the nearby bridge. The first dive in Smuff Lake was in November 2002. After multiple searches, Joshua's body was never found in the lake or in the nearby Gemini Lake. Even after initial dives, there was still a theory that he could be at the bottom of a nearby lake. A body in a lake generally floats to the top when the lake is around 45 degrees Fahrenheit. This temperature is cold enough to slow the decomposition, but also build up the gases within the body, causing the body to float to the surface. Early into the investigation, the temperature of nearby lakes was around that number. It was even speculated that Joshua's body was snagged by an object underwater, making it even harder for his body to float. Joshua's father, Brian, lobbied the Trident Foundation, a foundation considered the United States' premier water-based crimes investigative organization, to help search the 3 lakes on campus. The foundation got permission from the school and county to search the lakes in May 2003, but nothing was found. Brian still believed his son was in one of the lakes. In 2004, he went to an employee of the Minnesota Soil and Water Conservation District and proposed the theory that Joshua was at the bottom of the lake. The employee responded that in Stearns County, there had not been soil discovered capable of drawing someone in. The theory that Joshua had drowned was ruled out in 2022. Despite this, as recently as around 2023, Collegeville's surrounding lakes and river were searched by police. Investigators also considered that Joshua committed suicide or ran away. There's no evidence that he was suicidal or had attempted suicide before his disappearance. Joshua had broken up with his girlfriend the month before, but he remained good friends with her and didn't seem affected by the breakup. Aside from this, nothing else pointed to any suicidal ideation or desire to run away. Authorities had classified Joshua as a missing person, but stated there was no evidence of foul play. In 2003, Brian cited as evidence of malicious intent the scandal regarding sexual abuse by monks living at the St. John's Abbey, a monastery connected to the campus. The scandal made headlines in October 2002 when St. John settled a dozen lawsuits regarding the abuse. Since the 1960s, students have reported disturbing behavior from campus staff. In 1971, a student named Jerry McCarthy claimed that he suffered abuse at the hands of Father Bruce Wolminger, who was supposed to be counseling him at the St. John's Abbey. In 2016, St. John's Abbey publicized the files of 18 monks they agreed were credibly accused of sexually abusing minors, including Father Finian MacDonald, who for years worked as a counselor at St. John's University. He abused at least 200 people and paid for sex with male children while abroad in Japan. However, as many as 100 people were accused of abuse in the Collegeville region, meaning the true extent of these crimes may be even more horrific. Disturbingly, some of the monks who faced allegations were still on campus when Joshua vanished, and even helped supervise his dorm. At some point, Joshua had discovered the monks, who also lived in Metton Court and St. Maur. The abuse outraged him, and internet searches about the scandal had been found on his computer. Early on in the investigation, one bloodhound brought in by Joshua's family led them to St. John's Abbey, the monastery on campus. However, staff at the Abbey initially refused them entrance, pointing out that not all areas of the Abbey were accessible to the general public. Later, the dog was allowed to search, but only picked up Joshua's scent near the back of the building, and nothing else nefarious was found. Theories regarding a possible connection between the events were investigated by police, but no credible evidence of a connection was found. Investigators looked at the contents of Joshua's computer in his St. Maur bedroom. After he disappeared, police had not closed off his bedroom as a crime scene, so anyone had the ability to access his computer. Data was found to have been wiped from the computer's browser, and the program that performed the wipe was used days after his disappearance. In 2008, investigators recovered the wiped data from Joshua's browser. Information on making fake ID cards had been erased. They also found he had been talking to other men on Yahoo Personals, an online dating service, under the persona of a woman. His friends did not recognize the picture he used, a blonde woman he named Gwen. Investigators thought Joshua may have been exploring his sexuality and that he possibly met one of the men in person. They theorized he was abducted or went into a stranger's car on the lake bridge. In 2022, an investigator said the most likely avenue or theory regarding the case was that Joshua met someone from a dating site who was responsible for him disappearing. This theory could be supported by an incident from around the time of Joshua's disappearance, when there were 2 reports of a man driving an orange Pontiac Sunfire on campus, dropping off other men. Before the disappearance, when campus security approached the vehicle, one of the men who were dropped off ran away. After the disappearance, the driver was contacted, but he gave no information. Before security could investigate the vehicle, it had been destroyed. Around 2021, the sheriff's office sent Joshua's computer to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which started looking through its contents. In 2022, more images of unidentified men were recovered from his hard drive. The sheriff's office released 28 of those pictures, asking the public for their help in identifying them. Joshua's disappearance has remained a mystery for over 2 decades, with his family and investigators still seeking answers. Investigators continue to follow up on new tips, but nonetheless, they need anyone with information to speak up. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace with your host, Jolyn. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Joshua's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow the podcast on social media. Join me next week as I dive into another case.